All right, let's welcome in our guests to the Old Man of the Three with JJ Redick and Tommy Alter, presented by Cash App, and that is NASCAR driver Bubba Wallace. Bubba, what's up, man?
Oh, not much. Just getting some lunch in and talking to you guys. Beautiful day.
We should mention that you recently got a sponsorship agreement with Cash App. We just want to give those guys a shout out, Garrett and everybody over at Cash App, for showing love and supporting us. You guys have been great.
Absolutely. They've come on to be a part of our program. They're actually on our car this past weekend at Darlington. Unfortunately, had some mechanical failures that took us out early, but really cool brand and partnership to be with.
Bubba, how do you guys? I was always wondering this. How do you guys make the calculation on what is on the car at what point?
That's a good question. I leave that up to the team because seems like every other week we have somebody different. So I think it really goes down to their markets and where they can kind of outreach the most and what makes sense for the partnership. So that goes through like the management side of the team. And so I'm just told, hey, wear this fire suit this weekend. So I have no idea what the exact formula is.
Before we get into the important stuff, I have a question. This is a question that I've always wanted to ask a race car driver.
What do you have to do when you have to use a bathroom?
No, that's not the question. Okay. Although I assume you just pee on yourself.
Yeah. I have not, but people do.
Okay. So just logistically, how does one become a race car driver? It seems like the cost of entry to that, it's not something you can just go to a local park and pick up a basketball or pick up a tennis racket and hit balls.
Yeah.
Like the cost of entry to that seems like it would be a lot. And the other thing is, it seems like early failures, especially in your sport, could be pretty discouraging.
Yeah, for sure. And you hit it right on the head there. I mean, it's a couple grand to go buy a basketball or a tennis racket in racing. You know, that's just how it is, and that's unfortunate because a lot of people, starting out, can't afford it, and just from the entry level of things. I remember I got back into the go-karts. That's why I started out in go-karts. I went back probably 4 years ago now and tried to get back into it, and I paid for it all myself. And the cart was like $3,000, and it's just like, man, families that are trying to get into it don't have that type of funding and income right now, and so we have to figure out how to make it cheaper as a whole. And I mean, I know it's a lot of parts piece, a lot of metal and fabricating and stuff, but it's just tough. And so, and it's not like in the spotlight of, you can go to a park and see go-kart races. You have to find some like backwoods, dirt tracks, asphalt oval tracks, road course tracks, whatever it may be. And kind of just be there and be exposed to it. I think everybody asks how you get started. You have to get exposed to it, whether that's going to your big track when we're in town or finding a local short track and getting your start there.
Is that, I know you've done and we're going to get to some of this a little bit later, but you've done a ton of work in terms of like diversity initiatives and stuff like that with younger fans. Is this a part of that? Is trying to like sort of expand into the community in terms of just like exposure in cities and in places where they may not necessarily be exposed to the sport?
Yeah, exactly. And we've had conversations of how to make things better in today's world right now with everything going on, but also how to make our sport, more, well known to the people that just don't know a thing about it, especially when we're in town. There's been throughout the years, we've stayed in hotels and gone to restaurants, and people, see your driver's license, grabbing a beer or whatever. Oh, what are you in town for? And it's like the race, and they're like, the track is on the other side of the street, and they're like, what race? And it's like, oh Jesus, this is not good. The NASCAR race that's here in town, they're like, oh, I didn't even know NASCAR was here. It's like, yeah, it's
it is.
In about an hour, you'll hear the cars going here in a second. You wonder what that is. So we have to do a better job at diving into the communities, local communities at the tracks, and we've done a lot of work, leading up to races. Drivers are given, throughout the year, are given certain markets to do call-ins, do radio interviews, whatever it may be. To get people tuning in for those races. But, right now it's definitely something that's at the top of my list to somehow, some way through COVID, figure out how to be more in tune with the communities, to expose them to the sport. Hey, come on out, or go check out, here's a list of short tracks that are in the area. if you want to get your start, go sit in the stands, have some fun. And that's the same path I took. We went in the stands and watched a family friend race. The next thing you know, we were racing. And so it just starts with exposure. So yes, we're definitely trying to figure out ways how to do that safely with everything going on right now.
I grew up about an hour plus from Martinsville.
Yeah, buddy. It's a good place.
Yeah. And I can remember, especially as I got older, like junior high school and high school, I had some friends who would just skip out on school on Friday. And they'd just go down to Martinsville for the weekend and do their thing. And then when I played in Orlando, obviously the Daytona track is a huge deal. Yep. Daytona 500 is a huge deal. Just going back to my earlier question, you the first time you raced, it was in a go-kart.
Yep.
And you crashed.
Yep.
When if you're a driver, when do you transition from like a go-kart to an actual car? Do you have to wait till you're 16 till you actually have your license, or you get like a special exemption to start racing earlier?
Yeah, you don't have to have any license or anything. You have to have like the credentials at the racetrack and that type of license, but a driver's license, no. I was 13 or 14 when I was driving like a full-size race car, a late model stock car. And so, yeah, I think it's just the progression path. And now you see kids, they've lowered the age. A funny story for me, when I got back into those cars or got into those cars, I had a birth certificate. I had 4 or 5 birth certificates to make me, when I was 13, I was 16, like just to keep up and be able to race. So we cheated the system hard to be able to race with the best of the best. But now they lowered the age. You can get into a full-size stock car when you're 12 now. So, there's a learning gap, I feel like, for some of the kids that are coming up through, because just my path was go-karts, bandoleros, which is a quarter-size car. It's a little bit bigger than a go-kart. And then legend cars, same size car, but a lot more horsepower. Basically, we call it a street bike or crotch rocket on 4 wheels, same motor, everything, just on 4 wheels. The best car to drive ever. And that was when I was 11 to 12, and then late model was 13 to 14. Well, now kids are going from go-karts straight into a late model. It's just like, whoa, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to learn in between that jump right there, and it shows up on the racetrack with crashes and just inexperience and stuff. And so now, even the truck series, you can jump in at 15, I believe. So they're going, running a couple races in a late model and then jumping into a truck, and it's just like, time out. Let's slow it down a little bit.
Bubba, this is kind of a weird question, but were you, and are most drivers, were you like a cocky kid? Because I feel like to be that age and to be able to do this, you have to have a certain level either of like bravado, or maybe you could call it craziness or whatever it is, because most people are not necessarily wired to do that when you're 12, 13, 14 years old.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I try not to be. I've always tried to be humble, and I never walked around and was like, hey, to this day, I have never been the guy to say, do you know who I am? That's like the ultimate level of cockiness, right? I've never been able to pull that card. And so, and I'm proud of that. So I don't know. I mean, there's always like a difference, and there's a fine line between cockiness and confidence. I was always confident. So.
You've never said to anyone, why don't you Google me? You've never said that?
I did one time, and it was so funny. So back in the legend car in the summer shootout days, it was either winning or we were fighting. And that's how it was. We could be winning and fighting at the same time. It was always drama. And the guy who was running it at the time, he had somewhat of a say in what was going on. He comes down in his suit and tie, and he's like, I don't understand you causing all this drama. And I think me or my dad or whatever, we were like, who the F are you? Like, and he was like, Google me. And I was like, no, son, Google me. And so that's the only time. It was like some bigwig that I threw that to. We fast forwarded to, 8 years now. And we talk every time we see each other, we laugh about it. And it's good times. But I have pulled that card. That's
hilarious. So real quick. So I was on a guy's trip about 8 years ago in Atlantic City. And a buddy of mine had made the hotel reservation through like a contact that had a deal with the Revel or whatever. So when we went to go check into the room, my room was under JJ Redick. Well, that's not my name on my license, obviously. And I battled with this guy at the desk for like a good 45 minutes to an hour. And I was just exasperated. And the words, you could just Google me, came out of my mouth. And the dudes behind me were just like, wait a minute, did you just say that? Like, I got killed for that for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Like, the worst.
There's some things like we just cannot say. It's just like those things. And in your defense, it's like, dude, we could just end this conversation and get on if you just Google me. That's too funny. Oh, man.
I still feel bad about that.
Oh, man.
Your sort of national stature and fame has risen a lot in the last few months. And, one of the reasons is because you decided to take a stance. You decided to speak out in a sport that's predominantly white. I believe you're the first black NASCAR driver since Wendell Scott in 1971, yep. if I have my information correct.
Yeah.
And it's a sport also that's predominantly popular in the South, which of course has a really ugly history of racism in our country. And I read that when you watched the video of Ahmaud Arbery being murdered in Georgia, that was sort of the light bulb going on. That was the turning point for you. What was it? Obviously, I mean, it was gruesome, but what was it about that specifically that made you sort of decided to start being more vocal?
Yeah, well, now that we see these videos and the power of smartphones and camera phones and everything, we see them instantly. But by the time we seen that video, it was already 2 months after, and it was just like, these guys are still walking free. Like, what? Doesn't matter. Like, just, these cops need help. Whatever the story was, we need help. Oh, we'll go get them. We'll go kill them. What kind of world do we live in? What kind of country do we live in? And that just really, I was really dumbfounded by the whole process and hurting for his family. And I was just taken back, and I didn't really know what to think. And then seeing the George Floyd incident was like, okay. But a lot of people have asked, what made you speak out? And those were mostly part of it, but it was also, you're getting tweets. What does Bubba Wallace think? The only black guy in NASCAR, he's got to have an opinion. What does he think? What does he think? And I've been getting that for a while, and it's just like, I'll just stick to the straight path here. And then you've seen so many. It was just like every minute they were flowing in, and it's just like, okay, all right, here we go. I'm doing it. I'm gonna, go out here and say what I have to say, and if it offends anybody, then peace.
I would think, though, in your position, that's an incredibly difficult thing to do, specifically because of your peers. Mm-hmm. Look, in my sport, I play in a sport that's predominantly black. Yep. And I don't have to worry about the silence of my peers mm-hmm. or their beliefs, because I'm for 99% of the league I'm aligned with in all that yep. stuff. Yep. Whereas for you, you're one of one. You are one of one. Mm-hmm. How difficult is it to just deal with the silence of some of your fellow drivers?
Yeah, it's super frustrating. And I've been very vocal about that, especially right around those times, sending messages to like the top drivers and be like, hey man, I get it. We're in a tough spot with sponsorship. It's super tough for all of us because of the way that NASCAR works, and it's so money driven, and you have to have the financial backing with you. And a lot of these Fortune 500 companies don't want to say anything. They want to stay silent. And so when they have an ambassador speak out, it's like, oh boy, you just put us in a spot that we weren't ready for. And so I understand that part of it, but it doesn't make it right. And, I've had conversations where like, hey, just between us, it's great dialogue, but I encourage you to have those conversations with such and such company, with the higher ups of this company to make change what's inside the organization, to be able to allow you to speak your mind and to say what's right. And what you feel. So, for me, I've always been the guy that's just going to say what's on my mind, what's on my chest, and, whatever. I'm super sarcastic. Like you just throw it out there and, oh, that made you mad. Oh, well, so sorry. I wasn't being serious about it. So take a chill pill. That's just me. For me in this, seeing as being the only African-American it's easier for me to speak on just because I've dealt with, discrimination. I've gone through some of those things, as where my peers, they haven't. They don't know what it's like. But in making them understand and sharing my experiences, kind of brought attention to some of them, as to where still some of the other ones, they don't want to pay attention to that. They don't want to hear it. They just want to go out and drive. And while that's all fine and dandy, there's a bigger issue that we're all trying to fight, and we're all in this together to create change inside the world or inside the nation. And so it's super frustrating, but you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Tommy, we've talked about this a bunch on the podcast. I know we touched on this a little bit with Mark Cuban, but sports are money driven. We are all participating in a business. We are all participating in the economy, and I think it's really difficult at times as athletes, and in a broader sense for sports leagues as a whole, to make these stances, because you do run the risk of alienating fan bases, and you run the risk of alienating potential business partners.
Yep, for sure. That's so tough to wrap your head around, because it takes everybody on that forefront to make your dreams possible, to make the team, the league's dreams possible, to take them on a new height. So you got to have everybody on board. And once you speak out, it's like you're putting yourself on this pedestal, and it's like, you're going to come with me or not? So it's tough.
Who are the guys that have come with you? Who are the guys that have? I know you're friends with Ryan Blaney.
Yeah.
I think Jimmy Johnson has done some things as well. But who are some of the drivers that have really reached out to you or taken sort of a public stance with you?
Yeah, Jimmy's been obviously 7-time champ, just the absolute stud. He really took it upon his sleeves there to want to understand. He's like, hey man, I have no idea what you go through, and I apologize for that, but I want to help you out and help out, what we're trying to do together. And so that was really cool of him to reach out, for a little bit there. He was calling me about every day when we were in the thick of it, trying to figure out, ways we can, do things better, and put me in contact with certain people to be able to talk to them as well. And so Jimmy's been a huge guy to talk to and lean on and get to know a little bit better through all this. Ryan, for sure, him and I, we just went and had lunch together yesterday, and he's been there. He's been, very vocal about it. Ty Dillon, he texted me out of the blue, saying, hey man, would you want to go on Instagram Live and talk about some of your experiences? And at first I was like, no, not really. And he was like, all right, I think it'd be pretty beneficial and it'll help and expose a lot of people. I was like, you know what? All right, let's do it. And so we did that. Ty's been, he's been also like, hey guys, we don't need to be silent. We need to, speak up and try to conquer this together. Those are just to name a few that have definitely been there. So it's been cool to have that kind of support, but we definitely need everybody on board to help achieve this.
One of the other things we talked about with Mark is, and this goes the same for you, but then also for the NBA guys as well, with everything that's happened over the last couple of weeks in the league, is it means something different for your fan bases when you speak out than it does when, like, say a politician talks, or even necessarily even a entertainment person who's always talking about politics all the time, But when you guys decide to get in, when you get in, or when JJ gets in, or when LeBron gets in, or whatever it is, it means a bit more. Do you feel is there a part of you that feels like a pressure at all to, like, get things right all the time? Because at the end of the day, you're an athlete, and you're a driver, and you're somebody that has trained your whole life to do one thing, and then all of a sudden you are thrown into a firestorm where you're speaking out, and if you say if you get one fact wrong, you have one wrong statement, you get torn apart.
Yep, that's tough. That's the pedestal I talk about. Everybody asks, what's the hardest thing? And JJ, you probably agree. What's the hardest thing about being an athlete? It's that pedestal. And it's something that you don't go to the gym and learn how to be on top of a pedestal, and knowing that one wrong move, one wrong thing that you say is going to knock you off that pedestal, and people are just going to come at you. So you have to go through that. You have to go through the mess ups to figure out, like, oh, me saying something that Jimmy Joe just said, we're the same people, but his voice doesn't matter. And it's just like, okay, all right. I got to watch what I do. And it sucks. Unfortunately, that's just kind of the world we live in. But you have so many kids and so many people looking up to you as role models. And you kind of have to walk the fine line. And you have to walk it with care and know, like, if you want to venture off somewhere, you got to kind of have like the detailed route of which way you want to go. You can't just be firing off and not have the facts behind it. And so, unfortunately, with everything that I've gone through in the last 4 or 5 months, the facts are there, but people don't want to see it. And so you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, I've had enough public mess ups in my lifetime to know that you can get canceled more than once, apparently.
Yep.
No, and you learn from them. And look, there's I like what you said. You both kind of said this, but look, I love playing basketball in the same way that you love driving.
Yep.
And when I go to the gym, I'm thinking about how to master my craft and how to perfect my footwork and work on all these things so I can perform and I can compete and I can win. Like, those are the things that I think about. And for whatever reason, the pressure of fame, the pressure of being a sports celebrity, you are not really allowed to mess up. And I've done it enough to know that it really sucks. It sucks to go through it. It really does. Yep. I've never been attacked on Twitter by the president of the United States. And look, you handled it beautifully, I thought, in your response, and it was very chill. It was a very chill response.
Yeah.
But I would first of all, I'd have to think it'd be fairly surreal to wake up and see that tweet, and probably a little. There's a little bit of anger there as well.
Oh, no doubt. I legit was laying in bed when I had seen that tweet, and I was like, oh yeah, it has the blue verified check mark beside his name, so that's the old Donnie there, and it was just like, what? And my girlfriend Amanda, she was in the kitchen. I said, I just got tweeted from the president. She was like, what? I said, yeah, go check Twitter. And it was like 5 seconds of just silence. And it was like, are you kidding me? And it was just like, hey, so be it. And so I laid there for an hour or two. I don't know, just coming up with, just typing up something. Nah, let me delete that. Typing up something. Nah, let me delete that. And then finally it was like, through all this, which way do you want to go? And it was just like, we have the opportunity to go higher than the highest seat in office. How does that happen? There's one opportunity to be able to do that, and I'm going to pounce on it. And so people were like, man, who sent you those talking points? I'm like, nobody. Just said it what was on my heart. I was laid in bed and typed it up, and there we go. I had Amanda proofread it, make sure I didn't spell anything wrong, and hit send. And that's that. It's just, it was unfortunate to be a part of that whole deal and still kind of living through that, which is fine. I've moved on from that, but seeing how so many people are still hanging on to that, I should say, and carrying that like, you're a hoax, you're fake, and you should apologize. And it's just like, one, the president was 2 weeks late to this whole deal. 2 weeks. The facts have been out there for 2 weeks. It's just like, take the time, quit reading whatever he says, go read the news, go read the facts, then come back. But it's already too far gone down that path of hate and all that stuff. So whatever.
Well, what I don't understand is he's asking you to apologize, but what exactly should you apologize for? You weren't the one that found the noose. You were not the one that reported it. The FBI was the people that said, "Hey, we've got a hate crime." The NASCAR, governing body or the president is like, "We've got a hate crime." None of these things were coming from you.
Nothing.
They were coming from other people. You were just sort of like an innocent bystander in all this.
Yeah, people were saying, they were like, well, we know he didn't report it or anything, but he kept playing victim. And I remember I said, great, the great news is that there was no hate crime committed towards me or my family. Awesome. It was still a noose at the end of the day. And I'm playing victim. Like, what the? I'm legit thankful that it is not a hate crime committed towards me or my family. The whole victim, that's thrown out the window. Nobody's playing victim anymore. I'm just stating facts. It was still a noose. There you go.
Don't you guys think it's, and this is still happening to the NBA now, Bubba, I don't know how much you've been following it, but do you think it's really crazy that, the same people that are basically like, don't mix sports and politics, ever, like they just go on and on about that. And yet Trump, it seems like every other day inserts himself into sports. He tweets about the NBA ratings. He tweets about NBA guys not kneeling. He's trying to get involved in the Big Ten for some reason. Like, he doesn't do his job on COVID. He doesn't do what, like, you would think the president would do, which is just stay out of all of this and, govern the country. He's getting into these weird sports fights all the time.
Yeah, that's I tweeted out, 2 weeks ago, last week, whatever. I said there's so many people that are like, keep sports out of politics. And then we have, him come to the Daytona 500, and they're all just up in arms like, yes, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, hello, this is politics in the sports right here. Just saying. This is politics in the sports. But, hey, I'll let them live their life. I'll live mine and keep living rent-free, as we like to say, in their heads. I love it.
Your mother sounds like an amazing woman.
She has her days.
From everything I've read, she's got a lot of wisdom. So there's a quote attributed to her. This is coming from a racial slur directed at you back when you were 13 or 14, but she says, you get them back by winning, you earn their respect by winning.
Yeah.
And in this GQ article written recently by Donovan Ramsey, he talks about this notion, and we, Tommy, we talked about this with Taylor Rooks when we had her on the podcast as well. And essentially the notion is that black people, no matter their profession, athlete, doctor, business person, whatever, they have to be twice as good as a white person to essentially get the same level of respect. And you've seen this. Look, the best example of this I can give you in sports is probably Colin Kaepernick. Yep. Nothing against Josh McCown, but the guy's 41 years old and just got signed to a roster. And, Kaepernick has just gotten completely blackballed. Whatever argument you can make on whether or not he's a starting quarterback or an elite quarterback, he's clearly an NFL quarterback who has not been afforded the same opportunities as white quarterbacks. Yep.
Yeah, no, it's super tough. And those are the things you don't learn because I was brought in. You learn them as you go. Those are the things that you don't know going into it, I should say. But going into every race or going into the sport, whatever it was, I played basketball before I started racing. I went out there thinking that I was as good as the other people until you realize it's like, okay, he can dribble a little bit better than me. This guy can take this corner a little bit better. It's like, all right, let me work on that stuff. And once you start working on it, you start winning, and it's just like, all right, cool. And then you're still not accepted, and you're like, what? All right. I mean, this guy just won last week, and you're cheering, and I just won. Like, what's the deal? All right, come back out the next week. Won again. They're not saying anything, but they're quiet. And it's like, okay. You win again, and they're like, damn, this kid's pretty good. And it's just like, tried to tell you that on week one when I won, but hey, whatever. And so we do have to work harder, and that's part of it. And it's okay. I've accepted that, and you just got to go out there and ball out. That's all you can do.
I have a Richard Petty question for you.
Okay.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but like I look at Richard Petty as like the Michael Jordan of NASCAR, just statistically with what when did he approach you? How did it work when you sort of got signed up? And then was there any part of you where you were like, I mean, you're around these guys all the time, and obviously you've been racing since you've been a kid, but like, were you nervous to get signed up with him? What was your sort of thought process when that sort of came to be?
Yeah, no, I don't get really starstruck much. It takes somebody big. I mean, I about passed out. Don't get me wrong here, JJ. I was like sweating bullets over here talking to you, but
I have that effect on people. I had that.
Don't tell Bubba. Don't tell him. He doesn't need any more positive reinforcement.
Going into it though, like this was an opportunity for me. to be able to just go out and drive, no matter who the owner was. Knowing it was Richard Petty, the King. I didn't see it as like a stardom effect. I seen it as just, hey, I'm going to try to do the best in the cars that you provide, and we'll go out and try to win some races and put together really good seasons. And so, the blessing and the way 2017 went down, being in one ride with another team, being shut down and kicked out of that ride because of funding, opened up an opportunity to fill in for the 43. So it was kind of like the stars were kind of aligned right there in some weird, odd way. I won't question how, because it all worked out, but finally getting that opportunity in 2018. And it's already been 3 years, 3 seasons under our belt at the end of this year, which is crazy to think about. Flown by. But no, I think, racing for him and the family has been really cool. It's been a blessing. We've had a lot of fun. We've had a lot of good moments. We've had a lot of rough moments as well. Being a small, underfunded team, we face a little bit more challenges than others. But there are also teams that face more challenges than we do. So it's just levels to it inside of our sport and inside really every profession. But yeah, it's super cool to be associated with the King.
On one of our recent episodes, we had Chris Bosch on. And one of the things we talked about with him was just how difficult it is to win in the NBA. And I don't think that the average fan quite understands that. And we even were talking about just winning one regular season game.
Yeah.
And much less, 3 rounds of 3 playoff series rounds or winning a championship. Like it is so hard to win in the NBA.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would imagine it's even harder to win in NASCAR. Like how hard is it to win just one race?
Man, it's so tough. We always, people ask, like, explain NASCAR to us. Well, Cup Series is like pro ball. The Xfinity Series is like collegiate level. And then trucks is kind of like high school, your high school level. And so when you get to the pro level, there's no more climbing. There's swap around teams and yeah, sure. But there's nothing after that. After that is hopefully Hall of Fame, you want to have one of those type of careers. And it's just like, if you don't have it, you're out. It's not like, okay, I'm going to go on to the next series and see what it's got. No, you're there. And you're going up against guys. Kevin Harvick just won this past weekend. He's, I don't even know, he's been in this series for 19, 18 years or something ridiculous. And this is only my 3rd season. It's like, what? There's so much experience, that you have to go up against. And so, for a smaller team, for us, finishing second at the Daytona 500 in 18 was cool, but finishing 3rd at Indy last year was really incredible because, we're going up against those guys. Harvick still kicked our ass that race. He was gone, but there was a lot of other big names that either one wrecked out or we outran. And so, those moments are like, good Lord, I'm out here driving my tail off and getting the job done, it seems like, but still got some more work to do to go catch Harvick. And so it's just, you got to have every star align. And we've been saying it recently, we're in the middle of silly season and trying to, our next opportunity, we have an incredible opportunity in front of us with the funding on our side and the stars are kind of aligning. And we're like, we got to go find, we got to put the best situation in front of us to be able to run up front and win races. And I'm like, yeah. I said, but let's not get it mixed up. There's a difference in winning races and running up front. You can go run up front. You can go run the 2nd to 5th. That's running up front. But to go up and win, that takes another level. That's just another level inside of it. So you got to be ready for it. And so I'm excited for when that day comes when we get to be able to do that. I have all the confidence in myself that we can go out and do it. We've shown slight potential of that being able to happen in the stuff that I'm in now. And so with some changes coming, hopefully for next season, we'll figure it out and put it all together. So it is super tough, but every profession you get to the top level, you got to have it.
We talk with a lot of the NBA guys about like going from AAU to high school to college. They basically they're playing with each other and they know each other from a young age. Mm-hmm. Your teammates aside and your super close friends like Ryan aside, like how do friendships work in your sport basically? Because what I'm curious about is like to this thing about winning, like obviously there are wrecks and everything like that, but you're also in a thing where, unlike with a sport like basketball or something like that, where you're sort of in close contact because you're in the cars, like are you friends? Are you friends with the other drivers? Like what's the sort of like relationship dynamic like?
Yeah, no, I keep my circle pretty small. There's like a close-knit group of us that kind of all hang out, whether it's at the racetrack or away from the racetrack. And the other drivers, it's just like hey, how's it going? And that's about it.
Yeah.
And so, we're cordial with each other. There's some people that you just downright don't like, but whatever. Yeah. But you go out there and you still race each other with respect, no matter what your relationship is with them. You don't just go out there and run each other over. And so that's what, makes it even tougher, because you can race somebody really hard. I got wrecked by a guy a couple weeks ago at Daytona. And the only way to pay him back is, well, there's two ways to pay him back. You can go out and just retaliate and wreck him, or you can just run him really, really hard, race him like a butthead. And that's a nice way to put it. And just force him to make a mistake. And, it's just like, hey, you brought this upon yourself. So, but yeah, you always have your run-ins. We always say race car drivers never forget.
I would imagine there's a lot of rivalries. Do you think that Ricky Bobby and John Girard, was that probably the greatest rivalry in NASCAR history?
One of the worst movies made. Geez. Like funny, like sure, I'll give that.
It's not even that funny. It's not even that funny. There's my hot take. It's not funny.
It's not funny. It's just like, and then to see how like, so it's like the slingshot in Talladega Nights, and it's just like, no, this is not what it's like. It's a terrible representation of it. So I said, it is what it is. I love Will Ferrell. I thought it was, funny comedy, sure, but not really funny at the end of the day.
Have there been any racing movies where you've actually thought this was somewhat accurate?
That's a good question. Not really, because they always got to make it up to seem more hype than it is. Like, look at the Fast and Furious movies when they're in the middle of a race and they're shifting. What? Come on now. They're doing their eighth shift of a race and there's only 6 gears. Like, what are we doing here? So I don't know. The races or the movies that I've watched about racing that I've actually liked are more about around the Formula One stuff, like Rush, Driven. The Senna documentary was incredible. So it's been about Formula One. So for that, it's been somewhat realistic. But as far as the NASCAR movie, we're struggling right now.
I was going to ask you about Fast and the Furious, if that franchise is a benefit in terms of growing the sport, or it's just a completely irrelevant.
To me, it's completely irrelevant. I don't even know how many. I stopped watching after the second one, so I know there's
been like 10. They just keep pump every 2 years. They just pump out another one.
Yeah, I see. It's like Furious now, and I'm like, oh, what is this movie about? And I see it's the same lineup. I'm like, oh, all right. And then you'll see Fate. It's like, oh, okay, different movie, whatever. No, same thing. It's just like, what in the world? They're just changing up the name now.
I made it a little bit further than the second one, but I stopped watching when they drove the Ferrari out of the skyscraper and then landed it in another skyscraper in Dubai. Once that happened, I was like, I'm out. That's it for me. I'm not watching these movies anymore.
Yeah, it's tough. It
was already unrealistic, but now it's just science fiction. Now it's just science fiction.
Oh yeah, over the top.
We appreciate the time, Bubba.
No
one question for you, specifically for mainly the YouTube viewers, but for the listeners of the podcast, you have a giant life-size cutout of yourself behind you. Can you just explain that?
Yeah, so I want to say 2 years ago. Let's see, no, it's been longer than that. I've been in this house for 2 years, so it's about 3 or 4 years ago now. That photo shoot was going into 18. So yeah, okay, so 3 years ago. My mom or my sister, I can't remember who, had brought home this box. And I was like, what's in here? And there's a surprise. I think it was for my birthday or something, whatever. And they were like, it's a surprise. Open it up. And we got this for your birthday. And it was this thing all folded up inside. And she was like, yeah, we ended up getting it. Or they may have stolen it from a gas station. I don't know. I don't remember. And so it's just been sitting up here now. And it's been super funny. Now being a part of all my Zoom calls, I just kind of set this up and didn't really notice in the background, that I had that. And then people were like, is that a cardboard cutout? And I'm like, oh, well, matter of fact, it is. But it also has Coca-Cola on it. It's Coca-Cola standout or cutout. and I'm a brand ambassador for those guys. So it gives me some points there. So I'm good. I'm just crushing all. I got DoorDash in the back. Need to get some Cash App swag. But we're doing the podcast, so we're already knocking that out. So we're good.
You're hitting all the boxes.
Exactly.
I feel like the fact that it's from a professional photo shoot, like that's a win for me. Like I might think about doing something like that. Just right here and right here.
Yeah. Bubba, what do you think of JJ's setup?
It's very classy. I like it. It's very well, put. And if you've seen what's on the other side of my camera, oh, it's a mess. This is my gaming room. Computers everywhere. Oh, it's bad, but I like it. Looks good.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, Bubba, thank you for the time. We appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
For sure. It was a good time. Appreciate you, fellas.